In the heart of Victoria Island in the busy city of Lagos, stood a humble eatery, Mama D. Always filled with the laughter of strangers and regular customers alike, and the silent dreams of one young woman named Sophia. A beautiful young woman in her late 20s. On a quiet fateful day that took cue from many other days past, something dispelled of holiness, a silent darkness that paraded a superficial attraction, a yearning that shot against the twist of fate. Dive with me to the love story of Sophia. Shadows of the Heart. In the ever-busy eatery of Mama D, and standing behind the counter by the door leading to the inner section of the eatery, Sophia adjusted her apron nervously, brushing a hand over her forehead as she peeked out from the counter. The lunch crowd had begun to fill the small but popular spot, tucked beside the massive glass-paneled office complex. But she wasn't looking at the customers that obviously needed her attention, since her coworkers were busy here and there, attended to the customers. Sophia was impatiently waiting. She was waiting for her dream man, and as surely as she had expected, she saw him. Fatai. Tall, effortlessly handsome, and always smiling, walked in within her expected time frame with a confidence that wasn't arrogant but just natural grace. A magnetic presence that seemed to light up the room whenever he entered, lit her world, and she became vibrantly more alive. And to Sophia, he was everything beyond dream. She has had suitors from able young men, but Sophia kept herself for Fatai with secret devotion. He came into the eatery almost every afternoon, sometimes alone, sometimes with colleagues, but to Sophia, her best days was whenever he came alone. He always ordered the same meal: jollof rice, grilled chicken, and a bottle of water. And each time, Sophia found herself flushed with excitement, barely able to maintain composure as she served him. She practically made effort to be available, to be the person to attend to him every time he was at the eatery. Other members of staff of the eatery were gradually getting bored of fantasy and regular praises that she sang about him. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted with her eyes barely meeting his. "Good afternoon, thank you," he responded with a smile as usual. Just a smile, but it set her heart racing for the rest of the day. She had built castles in the air. Fantasies of Fatai sweeping her off her feet, confessing his love, taking her away from the eatery into a life of elegance and laughter. She talked to her tightly gripped pillow every night and told stories of this dream man, his charm, his voice, the way he carried himself. And then she would laugh to herself and allowed herself to feel the joy of her imaginary life with him. "You talk about him like he's a prince from a movie, Tata," her colleague once said to her. "You forget that I see him every day here like you do." "To me, he is," Sophia had replied with a dreamy sigh. But fate has its own way of telling stories. Fate has its own way of manifesting the realities of life. How did Sophia really fare? One warm afternoon, Fatima, a calm, gentle younger sister of Sophia, came to visit her sister at the eatery. Sophia had barely stepped away to get a tray of drinks when Fatai walked in. And just like that, the universe shifted, the ancient drum erupted, and the energy of the gods danced in resonance with the deeds of fate. Their eyes met. Fatima, tall and elegant in her own right, smiled politely to Fatai, who stood up to comfortably reach into his back pocket for his wallet. Fatai hesitated, and then smiled back, wondering about nothing in particular. It was a spark, immediate, undeniable. Then he stopped her before she could walk past him, to be sure that he was not ignoring someone that he may have known or met in the past, but forgot. Sophia returned to see them exchanging pleasantries. And she quickly jumped at the opportunity. "Oh, this is my younger sister, Fatima," she said, trying to sound casual. "Nice to meet you," Fatai said, offering his hand for a handshake. Fatima shook his hand with the gentleness of an elegant lady in control of her space. Fatai noticed her calm exclusiveness demeanor but modest presence, and he smiled with appreciating regards. Sophia felt something twisted in her stomach. "I told you, he is a nice guy," she said nervously, but they were both too busy observing each other intently that they couldn't hear her. That moment marked the beginning of something new, the unveiling of something that wasn't hers. But think about it. Did Fatima know that Fatih was her elder sister's lingering crush? Was Fatima's first smile at Fatih pregnant with dubious, or any form of motive? Not at all. It was just an innocent natural gesture to someone whose eyes met hers, who probably attracted her attention as a reflex of his sudden standing to his feet, the moment she walked into the eatery. Fatima just came back from school and never had the time to know if her sister had a crush. Within weeks, Fatih and Fatima began seeing each other. It started with casual visits, short conversations, and then turned into dates. Sophia watched from the sidelines, smiling through gritted teeth. Her heart ached, and cried deep within, but she said nothing. Her regular song of praises for Fatih diminished, but she continued to put up the exciting act, to save her face amongst her co-workers. But fate brought the worst state, devastating feelings every time Fatih came around to eat, and asked her about Fatima. She loved her sister, but not as much as she would love to be with this man. She remembered one particular evening, standing by the kitchen door, listening to Fatima gush about the picnic date Fatih had taken her on. The flowers, the little surprises, the kiss on the forehead, and how she dragged him and kissed him on his lips like her life depended on it. Sophia smiled and nodded, but as soon as Fatima left the room, she broke down in silent tears. When Fatih proposed to Fatima, Sophia was one of the first to be told the exciting news. She forced a smile, hugged her sister, and congratulated them. But that night, she cried herself to sleep, but not before recounting the two men that she had turned down their proposal, just because of her secret fantasies for Fatih. The wedding was grand and beautiful. Fatih spared no expense. Fatima looked radiant, glowing in her white gown. Sophia stood beside her, playing the role of the dutiful sister, cheering and clapping. But inside her, a storm raged, a bitterness that was poisonous the air she breathed. Time passed and life experienced the manifestations of realities for the living. Sophia was hasty to take her chance with Farouk. A gentle, hard-working, and kind-hearted man. He ran a small logistics business and was well respected in his community. He was one of the suitors that were earlier turned down by Sophia, and the most preferred by her mother. He had always loved Sophia deeply and had declared his intention to marry her as soon as she accepted to marry him. But Sophia rejected his proposal back then. When the wedding preparation of Fatima and Fatih was at its peak, Sophia was dazzled with the displeasure of her younger sister getting to marry before her and flung into action. She paid a surprised but corny visit to an exhilarated Farouk and conditioned him to make promises. One of which was for him to promise to marry her within a given date. She was in a hurry to get it done before Fatima's scheduled date. Farouk was excited to meet her demands if that was going to avail him the chance to finally marry her, but he insisted that their wedding was going to come after Fatima's wedding, and certainly not before. He knew why she was in a hurry, but he had his own life to plan, instead of hanging it in the shadows of someone else's life event. Sophia had no choice but to go with his stance, hoping to fill the void in her heart. They got married a few weeks after Fatima's marriage. Their marital life started warmly and less expressive of the feel of a newly married young couple. She felt her husband's hand holding her to sleep one night and became irritated that she couldn't sleep. On the contrary, her husband was only cuddling her and trying to help her to sleep. She was only able to relax her mood when she switched and imagined that she was sleeping in the warm cuddle of Fatih's arms. She fell asleep with a smile. But cracks began to form quickly. Farouk's business started facing unexpected losses. Deals collapsed and payments delayed. Arguments began, first over money, then over trivial things. Sophia, though physically with Farouk, was emotionally elsewhere. Her thoughts wandered often to Fatih, his smile, his laugh, the life she believed should have been hers. She visited Fatima's house quite often. Each time she visited Fatima, she saw the life she had dreamt of: beautiful home, comfortable lifestyle, a loving husband, with Fatima now driving her own personal luxurious car. Fatih had insisted that Fatima should not bother to mark his birthday, and it was settled. But Sophia persuaded and manipulated her sister to make sure that she did something great for him in appreciation of the nice person that he was. It was their first year together as couple, and it will be wrong for her not to surprise her loving husband with a little celebration within the house. Fatima fell for the idea and surprised her husband with a little celebration. Sophia came with a gift of wrist watch that got Fatima wondering why she wasted so much money, considering her financial situation with Farouk, her husband. The three of them ate and drank on the dining table, and to everyone's surprise, the moment Fatih's plate was empty, Sophia quickly stood up and cleared his place from the table. "It's okay, today is your day, let me help my sister and also teach her how to take good care of her man very well," she said as she walked into the kitchen to drop the plates. Fatih and Fatima just looked at each other in meaningful stare, without say a word. She came back and quickly finished her own food. Then Fatima, who had also finished eating her own food, collected the plates to the kitchen and quickly washed them. While Fatima was washing the plates, Sophia quickly dragged Fatih to the middle of the living room to dance. A reluctant Fatih was growing impatient, and his level of tolerance was getting the red heat. She buried the side of her head on his chest and glued herself to him in a slow, gentle dance. She closed her eyes and saw herself with Fatih in a cloud of roses. He was looking so young, handsome, and charming. Holding her hands in his and ran around in a beautiful garden. Meanwhile, Fatima had finished washing and was shocked to see what was happening in her living room. She stood at the entrance to the kitchen, dumbfounded and uncertain with what particular thought should run through her head. Her husband looked questioningly at her and embarrassed with internal fury. He gestured to Fatima to come over and drag her away, but Fatima went back into the kitchen to nurse her shame. She was not sure of what her sister was up to, but for whatever it was, Fatima was very embarrassed and mortified, wondering what her husband will think of her. But to Sophia, her glorious and wonderful moment was interrupted when Fatih couldn't take it anymore, and he gently disengaged himself from her grip and excused himself out of the house. "Oh, shame on you. You don't even know how to dance," Sophia said jokingly as Fatih picked up his car key and left the house with a sad smile of diplomacy. Henceforth, her frequency to Fatima's house became checked but remained cordial. Time passed and children came into the picture. She pretended to be happy and laughed at family gatherings. She even played with Fatima's children, but inside, the jealousy and envy simmered. Farouk began to withdraw from his wife Sophia because he couldn't understand the shift in his once cheerful wife. Her touch was cold. Her words, impatient. He tried, but it felt like chasing a shadow. Things worsened. Debts mounted. Their rented apartment in debt as their food stock grew emptier by the month. Friends stopped visiting. Sophia started snapping at Farouk for little things: unshaved bears, insufficient food allowance, lateness, missed calls. There was an underlying bitterness in her voice that neither of them could explain. One evening, Fatima brought lots of food stock to her house alongside her husband Fatih. She was superficially joyful as she expressed limitless appreciation. As they were leaving, she watched with humiliation, through the window of her dimly lit kitchen that had struggled to feed her children for days. Her face was masked with envy, pains, and shame as she watched Fatima and Fatih drove off onto the main road in a luxurious car. It wasn't just poverty. It was punishment, silent, spiritual, and self-inflicted. And the truth is now coming to light. Farouk sat her down one evening and asked Sophia, "What is really happening in our lives? What happened to us?" he asked with pain in his eyes. She almost yelled at him for asking her such a senseless question, but she endured and looked away, unable to answer. If only she had known enough to reveal to her husband that the ghost of another man haunted their bed every night. But somehow, she had a deep reflection that reminded her that that was not the life she dreamt of, that was not the life she had planned for herself, and certainly, she did not come into this world to suffer in pains and humiliation. That night, Sophia broke down. She wept like a child, grief poured out in the flow of her warm tears. The next morning, she woke with a pounding head and a hollow heart. Mama Sakiru, the only neighbor that had not deserted her in her struggles, invited her to join her for prayers at the mosque one Sunday afternoon. She trusted that Allah is merciful and able. After the general prayers, they sat back to seek the face of Allah for His mercy and redemption. While they were still praying, a very young Alpha stood beside Sophia and invited her for a word. She was initially angered by his interruption and disrespect for elders. But little did she know that his youthful appearance was part of his spiritual endowment. He was very well gifted spiritually. She turned and looked questioningly at Mama Sakuru beside her, and she said quietly under her tone, "Go, don't you know him? Don't waste his time, go to him." Sophia stood up and walked over to the waiting Alpha. She was not just curious, but also wondering why her friend was showing such regards for such a small boy. The Alpha quickly apologized for interrupting them and introduced himself, since she did not know who he was. Then he went straight to the point. "You are the reason your home is sinking," the Alpha said, his voice calm but firm. Sophia had something to say, or at least defend herself from such unacceptable accusation. But she reminded herself that the only reason she was there was to seek answers and solution. She was not too regular in prayers at the mosque. Sophia remained calm and listened quietly as her lips trembled. "There is a man, your sister's husband. You've held him in your heart for too long. Unless you release him and let light shine in your own marriage, nothing will flourish, and you will continue to flush your marital glory down the drain. You must let Allah shine light in your home." Tears streamed down Sophia's face at the revelation. She held her hijab and dabbed her eyes, but by the time she opened her eyes, the Alpha had gone. The mosque spun and she collapsed to her knees and wept until Mama Sakuru came to her aid. But she was too ashamed to reveal anything to her friend, and together they went home. In her solitude, she had a quiet judgmental retrospection on herself while making stone-cold resolutions for herself. It was a self-redemption. The following days were painful. Memories came flooding back, every smile from Fatih, every imagined future. Sophia realized how deep the roots had grown. But she wanted to be free. She dug through her drawers and found the old photo of Fatih that she had secretly kept. She stared at it for minutes, then she lit a match and burnt it. She remembered right then that she used to have a course mate called Zainab that was very strong-hearted, back in her days at FCE. She told herself that she had to be as strong-hearted as Zainab would be, against her own adulterous cravings. As the flames consumed the paper, a weight lifted. Sophia prayed on her for the first time, truly. She asked for forgiveness, for healing and for peace. She apologized to Farouk one night, not just with words, but with tears, with a vulnerability he had not seen in years. "I'm sorry, Farouk. I've been unfair to you. You didn't deserve any of it," she said. She did not say completely why, but she simply told him that she had not been unfair to him. And he comfortingly consoled his wife. He hugged her, and for the first time in a long time, she hugged him back with feeling. And change began. Farouk received a sudden business offer, and within days, an old client resurfaced with a bulk contract. Sophia started a home-based pastry business, and orders began trickling in with urgency and immediate deliveries. Slowly and steadily, joy returned. She laughed more. She held Farouk's hand again and discovered that she had lost so much and missed so much in her marriage. They danced in the living room one night, just because they felt happy. And her joy was crowned with a surprise delivery of a luxurious car that her husband had ordered for her 6 weeks earlier, and her joy knew no bound. They began to rebuild, one piece at a time. Months later, Fatima was overwhelmed with surprise at the sudden transformation of Sophia and her family when she visited. They sat on the balcony of Sophia's house sipping drinks while gisting. "You seem different," Fatima said. Sophia smiled genuinely and said to her sister, "I let go of something that was never mine." Fatima didn't understand the depth of that statement, but she smiled back. That night, Sophia sat on her porch, watching the stars. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't yearning for anything. Her heart was whole. And in that wholeness, she found peace. She got her life back and her family became whole. Her children began to experience and enjoyed a genuine and decent family and parenting. Sometimes, the heart must break, to become whole again. And maybe stronger. The story of Sophia. Shadows of the Heart.